But if we are to be able to explain macro behavior, we somehow have to get into the middle. We have to have an experimental technique for accessing or telling the story of how 100,000 neurons within a single cortical column is functioning. Now, one possibility is to model that, and I know Henry Markram with IBM money is trying to do something along those lines. But that seems to me to be absolutely critical. That's a big gap. We'll get there. I don't see how to get there right yet. But there has to be some way of pulling these things together so that we understand what we are seeing when we see an fMRI diagram. I mean, what it really means in terms of mechanism. I mean, it's very pretty pictures, and we say the brain lights up when, but we don't understand what it means in terms of mechanism. And the mechanism story is down here, but it's too fine-grained, so somehow we have to get in between.
Finally, who would you have liked to have had a conversation with, historically?
Oh, that's hard, because there's at least 5 or 10 people that I'd love to have had a conversation with. If you take into account their personalities, I think Isaac Newton wasn't supposed to have been a very engaging fellow, though I'd love to have talked to him. I think Immanuel Kant, not because I think his philosophy was correct, but because he was simultaneously a groundbreaking thinker with regard to astronomy. He figured out how the solar system formed. He figured out what spiral galaxies were, and wrote a book called On the Theory and Natural History of the Heavens before he became a very, very famous philosopher late in his life. And he knew his physics. He admired Isaac Newton enormously, and he also wanted to know how the mind works, and gave a very interesting theory, one that captured many imaginations. And I'd like to talk to him, not so much by going back there and talking to him, but by bringing him forward and saying, Emmanuel, have I got some surprises for you? Some of them you're going to love, some of them are going to dumbfound you, some of them might move you to say, curses, I got it wrong. But, okay, Immanuel Kant comes to mind.
That?
Well, of course, we'd all love to talk to Darwin and just sort of sit in the garden in Down Cottage and just spend the afternoon. And yeah, that of course would have been wonderful. I would also like to have known William Hamilton. I knew John Maynard Smith very briefly and sort of towards the end of his life, and I just found him wonderfully interesting to talk to. Helmholtz must have been fantastic.
Anybody want to meet Freud?
I don't think so. No, I mean, Freud wasn't he wasn't a very good guy, actually. And I don't think he was very smart either.
Yeah. So your children, Anne and Mark, are now neuroscientists. Are they? What are they working on? Same? Are they? Or
Well, they're both postdocs. Anne works on decision making in the awake behaving monkey, and Mark works on planning in the awake behaving monkey. And so the work is somewhat close, and they trade back and forth, and they go back and forth. And of course, we're interested in both of those projects because of the relevance to the wider issue about judgment and planning and deciding as we know it in a larger context. Yeah.
So they have a philosophical bent as well?
They grew up in a philosophical household. They got a philosophical education without even appreciating that it was happening. My son, I remember him in the hot tub with my colleague Jerry Doppelt. My son was then about 13 and giving Jerry Doppelt hell for his foolish theories of moral philosophy. This is a distinguished moral philosopher, moreover. So, they learn lots of philosophy, but they took good care to sort of stay a certain distance away from mom and dad. And I think that served them well. neuroscience is close enough to what we do.
I was going to ask you about free will, but I'll probably save that for another time. I think there may be some questions from the audience anyway. So let me just thank you for the conversation.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you so much.